Well, social norms, structural and systemic factors such as abuse and poverty continue to impact the lives of children in South Africa. And although the Constitution provides for the rights of children to be protected, many still see these rights as unachievable dreams. And as we mark International Day of the Boy Child, we take a closer look at the societal pressures placed on boys who face many challenges, such as the stigma of seeking help and some of these that hamper their well-being and development. Now, have our boy children been overlooked, and what is being done to protect them? These are some of the answers that we hope we will be able to get to with our guest. And we're joined virtually by Refilwe Mokoena, who's a Child Safety and Protection Manager at the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And we hope to be joined shortly by 18-year-old Dikgang Morudu, who's a student at the University of Limpopo and also president of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament. But if in the meantime, Refilwe, good morning to you and thanks for your time.
Morning, Sakina. Thank you so much for having us, and hi to everyone.
It's such an important conversation this morning, Refilwe. You know, just looking at the boy child, because very often we hear complaints that we overlook the boy child who grow into young men who struggle a lot of times in society. But if we look at today and the importance of the International Day of the Boy Child, talk to us about what makes this such a pivotal day.
Thank you so much. I mean, first of all, this day falls within Child Protection Month, right? So I think that's also an important thing to note, in that boys need protection. The boy child needs protection as much as the girl child. So it's very pivotal that we're hosting this day within South Africa's Child Protection Month. And I think otherwise, the reason why it's important is because boys are disproportionately affected by specific types of violence. So particularly physical violence, murder. I think we've all heard of the very tragic event that happened in Fleurhof a few days ago. So it's important for us to realize that violence plays out differently for different genders. And as you said, because of harmful notions about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a boy, boys and men are less likely to seek out the help that they need, which can actually then exacerbate the problem in terms of, what do I do with this trauma, this anger, which might come out as violence towards other people, or even violence towards themselves in terms of self-harm, suicidal ideation, or even suicide itself. So that's why it's important for us to commemorate days like this and really look at what are the unique challenges that boys are facing.
And as you say, Refilwe, you know, when we look at the physical aspect of it, I suppose easier to act on that because there is actual evidence that one can see. But are we as a society paying enough attention to the psychological and emotional harm that is visited upon boys, and why or why not?
Thank you so much. And that's a great question. There's almost a silent crisis, a silent mental health crisis happening amongst boys and men, precisely because they are less likely to articulate what they're going through. You know, as we know, certain values in terms of what it means to be masculine highlight dominance, highlight handling things yourself, highlight not seeking help, not expressing emotion. So a lot of what boys are going through, particularly concerning their mental health, can actually go undetected.
And then society's expectations of boys who grow up to be young men. Again, you know, we touched on how they are expected to be tough, how they expected to not show emotion. And then we seem to be surprised as society when later on in life that emotion is missing when we expect them to show it.
Yes, exactly. I think notions like indoda must, so not just being tough, but also being a provider, is a huge amount of pressure on boys. And I think particularly boys who face multidimensional poverty. So meaning if they're living in households that are struggling economically and also don't have access to the healthcare, education, protection they need, there's a huge amount of pressure that can be put on those boys. And if they don't have the support system, the psychosocial support systems, if their parents are struggling to put basics on the table, it can then manifest later with issues with emotional expression, as I said, sometimes with violence. And those actually are some of the things that we work to address as the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in our initiatives that particularly are targeted at boys and at redefining masculinity in our country.
Just apologize there for the connection there to Refilwe. It does seems to be breaking somewhat, but hopefully Refilwe, it will be fine as we continue the conversation. Because I wanted to ask you about creating safe spaces. Now, what can parents do? And I suppose schools and educators, because that is an avenue that children universally will pass through. So what can parents, school and the society at large do in order to create safe spaces for young boys and young men to express themselves?
Sure. I think, first of all, and this is what we've actually learned in our work, is number one, being aware of issues that they're facing, which might not be obvious, might not be visible. And then basically creating a safe space pretty much means including safe mentors. So, for example, when we host what we call our Boy Joy Summit, which happens during the 16 days of activism every year, and we also work with 14 community-based organizations across 6 provinces who do a lot of this creation of safe spaces in school. It's really about creating a space that can be as simple as a classroom, a club, a committee, where boys come together with safe adults. I think that's critical, having very positive role models who they can really speak about what does it actually mean to be a boy. I think we had some very interesting conversations with boys when we did this in November, December last year, and they expressed what really brings them joy, be it being in close connection to loved ones, be it basics like food, be it basics like being able to go to school. Those are some of the things that are important to them and which as adults we have to pay attention to so that they can then open up about some of the deeper issues that they're facing.
Right. Refilwe, we are now joined by Dikgang Morudu, student at the University of Limpopo, and he is also the president of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament. Dikgang, thanks so much for your time this morning. Welcome to the conversation. Let me just jump in because Refilwe and I have already started this conversation. I want to know from you, what are some of the misconceptions, the biggest misconceptions that society has about what boys need in order to thrive?
The society has put this mentality that a real man does not cry, real man does not show fear, and always takes control. It created pressure and even confusion for many of us. And this thing continues to happen even today, even though we know these are the type of things that we happen to hear about that come from the past, the history of us as Africans, but only to find out that now things have changed. We're in the fourth industrial revolution, but still it's unbelievable that we still kind of face these kind of situations whereby children are now subjected, especially a boy child is subjected to becoming someone who is strong enough to not even show emotions, and this is not good at all for young boys.
And Dikgang, you're an 18-year-old young man growing up in South Africa. Some of the myths that we always hear about, if you'd like to delve into more of those, but also talking about issues such as toxic masculinity and what that teaches boys. Sometimes it leads to a message that strength means aggression and showing emotion means weakness, as you just pointed out. Dominance equals respect and things like that. So given the position that you hold, speak to us about reflecting on these concepts in safe spaces as young men.
Actually, I think what is very, very important is to start by also redefining what masculinity is, because it's all about making sure that you understand that masculinity needs to be redefined as something that also benefits young boys. It's not always about being a boy who is always in control of everything, or a boy who is always has to be very strong to take on everything. Yes, most of young boys are providers at homes because of poverty and all those kind of stuff. But we need to then start by redefining what masculinity is in a good way. That's how we can then show boys, because I think masculinity is defined in a wrong impression in the society we live in, and it is very, very important that we try to change that that term masculinity. Rather, let us redefine masculinity as compassion. Let's redefine it as kindness. Let us redefine it as, being able to help those who are vulnerable, especially girls out there. Because when they see a boy, they see a monster because of what the society has, defined boys as, and what the boys have in their mindset when it comes to masculinity, and that needs to be changed. But I would like to indicate that we had so many platforms that we actually were able to engage with young boys. And that's when I've started realizing the importance of, speaking and bringing young boys, because they're not given a platform. In most cases, it's all about girls being involved in certain programs, but boys are not given such kind of programs, like for them to come and speak regarding the issues they go through. All thanks to the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, to also making a point that they reach out to young boys, especially through platforms that we had. We speak about the Boy Joy Summit, which we had last year, a very successful session where young boys were able to express, the issues that they go through, and they were able to come up with some of the recommendations that they want to see happening in terms of the way the society view them. Yeah, so that's what we think it is very important to do. We redefine masculinity, and secondly, we give platforms to boys for them to actually come as one and then discuss what are the things that are affecting them. Then government, NGOs can come together and say, no, this is what we can do for them.
I want to talk a little bit about peer pressure, Dikgang, and how the pressure to prove your manhood impacts on the decisions that you make as a young man.
Yeah, no, that's the most important thing. I like the fact that you mentioned that, because I feel like most of young boys, especially those who are, vulnerable in terms of drugs and, are being abusive, it's because of peer pressure. And it's one of the key things that is actually the main root of what boys are today, because it's all about boys telling other ones, advising them to do wrong things. But I can say that we have to then deal with this root, because if we deal with this root, then we're in a good impression of ending, the stereotypical way of how people think about boys. So we need to then have certain campaigns whereby we come and teach young people, or young boys especially, on the responsibilities that they need to take when it comes to certain decisions they take that they don't find themselves vulnerable into. Because sometimes I feel like this peer pressure, it is as a result of not knowing some of the disadvantages of doing certain things. Yes, for them, when they advise you to do something, it might be interesting and good thing to do, but without the knowledge and knowing the consequences of that, what is going to happen if you do that, it will make a boy child to end up being in a vulnerable situation. So what I'm actually saying is that to eliminate this problem of peer pressure, let us go to rural areas, go and reach out to young boys and teach them the importance of taking rightful decision. This also, I'm speaking about also what we call awareness campaigns, teaching them about the effect of drugs and effect of bullying and all those kind of things, so that when that boy is advised by someone to do something that is wrong, they are aware the consequences that will come after that.
And I have a minute for each of you, but I quickly want to ask Refilwe, how do we ensure that we continue to support and continue to look at the needs of boys and address those, while at the same time still advancing the needs of the girl child?
Thank you. I think I wholeheartedly agree with Dikgang. It's about recognizing the differences, the different challenges that girls and boys face in the particularly violent society that we live in, and then curating those safe spaces for them. I think there can also be positive peer pressure, which is what Dikgang was alluding to when he was speaking about campaigns. Many boys who've been part of our programs have gone on to start clubs, committees, where they've actually understood that we can influence our peers to understand how to better deal with the pressures that come with masculinity and to even redefine that masculinity. So I think it's about creating those spaces, be it in the home, in schools, in communities, and also us as adults making sure that children, the boys themselves, are the ones in the leadership positions of those, and that we are really there to support.
And Dikgang, I'll give you the final word. What message would you like to leave society with about empowering and making sure that we take the boy child along as we move as a society?
It is very, very important to understand that boys are humans also. We also humans, we breathe, we also, we are also people. So the society has to stop this impression of treating us like we are just nothing. It's more like we are now being put aside as some other species that comes from somewhere and is not actually living in this earth. It's very, very painful to see young people, especially boys, being vulnerable in drugs, homeless, because they're not given the love they deserve. They are told to be strong. So the message I want to bring to the society is, let us treat children equally. Whether it's a boy child, whether it's a girl child, let us be treated equally. That's very, very important, because when we are treated equally, we can be able to work together to eliminate all these situations that we see about teenage pregnancy and all these other things, if we can be treated equally and hear from boys. Boys are being put aside. Society, please, let us sit down with boys, let us have forums with boys, and let us talk and discuss the issues that we are currently facing.
Well, thank you so much to both our guests this morning. Refilwe Mokoena, Child Safety and Protection Manager at the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and Dikgang Morudu, who's a student at the University of Limpopo, talking to us about challenges facing boy children and breaking the myths around masculinity.